What kind of America are we living in today? I have to talk about the elephant in the White House. Not Elon, well, a little Elon, but mostly the other guy, Trump. So when I look at Trump, I see more than just one tendency swimming around inside him, and not all of those tendencies can be judged like the others. So when you put a blanket statement on anyone, you might be right, but you're at least a little wrong. And I don't care if you love or hate Trump, I really don't, because I'm not even really talking about Trump so much as I want to explore A, the tendencies that are driving him, and B, the actions that are happening in our government right now that speak to the spirit of America. So perhaps if we see the things that Trump is doing more clearly as a set of tendencies, we can avoid unnecessary divisiveness in what's left of the America that once was.
This is very historic, an executive order establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve and digital asset stockpile. This is a promise that you made throughout the campaign, and today we're keeping that promise. The reserve will be capitalized with Bitcoin that the federal government already owns, so it won't cost taxpayers a dime. This is like a digital Fort Knox for digital gold. And premature sales of Bitcoin over the past years cost American taxpayers over $17 billion in lost value, because we didn't have a long-term strategy.
Right.
Now we do. So.
And this is something you believe in fully?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
And the whole community believes in it.
Very good. And I made the promise, right?
Absolutely.
Now that right there was Trump signing into an executive order a Bitcoin strategic reserve. I've been listening to podcasts 5 or 6 a day for months about the potential of something like this happening. Ever since the Bitcoin convention in Nashville that both Trump and RFK stepped into, if either one of them were getting into the White House, they were going to be bullish on crypto. And this was a Bitcoin place, so everyone thought he was going to be really bullish on Bitcoin. But now we have people like Kyle Kulinski, Crystal Ball, Destiny, Daniel Pinchbeck, Jamie Wheel, all people whom I have great respect for, saying that this spells doom for our democracy. I want to dive into some of the nuance, just some of it. Let's start with Crystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski pitching the idea that Trump might be intentionally trying to crash the economy of the United States to bring about a Silicon Valley-infused oligarchic rule.
All right, guys, question today. Is Trump intentionally crashing the economy? I've been entertaining this theory a little bit more lately because his economic moves just seem so stupid and terrible and counterproductive without thinking that he is intentionally trying to cause harm. So let me go ahead and walk you through the theory and you can tell me what you think. All right, so here is what Shoykat Chakrabarti, who was an aide to AOC and himself running for Congress against Nancy Pelosi now, here's what he had to say about this theory. He says, it really is confusing why Trump would want to intentionally massively shrink the US economy. None of this is due to external circumstances. He is manufacturing a recession. But it makes sense when you realize his goal is to create something like Russia, where the economy is run by a few oligarchs loyal to him. Creating that state is hard in a large, dynamic, powerful economy with too many actors who can oppose him. So he's accelerating, concentrating money and power into the hands of his loyalists while he crashes the rest.
That should send a chill down your spine, bro.
Cool story. Might be true. The tendency might fit. But let's look a little deeper. Kyle Kulinski isn't alone in saying that if the United States will use taxpayer money to buy Bitcoin, to put that into a strategic Bitcoin reserve, that it can be seen mostly, and I would agree with this, as a bailout of the crypto whales that have been sitting on billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, yet they need a way to cash in on that without liquidating their holdings and crashing the price. Let's get the taxpayers to buy the Bitcoin from the whales, just like the taxpayers who bailed out the banks during the housing crash. The only thing is, that's not what this executive order was. The executive order that Trump signed said simply that previously forfeited Bitcoin from scandals would go into the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, which is about 200,000 Bitcoin. If they were moral, they would remove half of that and give it back to people who were basically had their Bitcoin taken from them and was confiscated temporarily by the US government. That should go back to the people. But no taxpayer dollars will be used to buy Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin that US does hold will never be sold, according to this executive order. And it adds, in my prediction, by never selling the Bitcoin, these 200,000, and if they do acquire more, by never selling it, that will stabilize the price. And it also recognizes Bitcoin as a strategic asset. That, to me, is actually pretty sensible, yet at the same time sensational recognition from the world's top superpower. So that sensibility is something that I'd like to see more of in the spirit of America. Let's get back to this tendency. The tendency I see at play here in Trump is that he wants to take it slow. This actually disappointed a lot of people, but Trump is taking it as slow as the team around him wants to build the Bitcoin strategic reserve. It's either that or the tendency is that Trump trusts his team to appease the crypto bros that voted for him. Like, this is a way just to make them happy. Like, I'm making good on my promise, but it's not as much as I was making you think that might happen. Like, we'll get the taxpayers to buy 200,000 Bitcoin every year. That would raise the price, but that's basically meaning you and me are also paying for that. But here's the thing. You can't say that Trump doesn't care about crypto. In fact, he's buying Ethereum like it's the fountain of youth, he and his family. And oddly enough, the price has been going down. Ethereum's price has been unnaturally beneath market valuation, and that is from major shareholders shorting the price. You could say that is major market manipulation. If Trump really wants his Ethereum to go up in value, he wants to buy all of it at a lower price. And it seems like that's what he's doing. I'm not going to say that he is involved in the manipulation of keeping the Ethereum price low, but I'm not going to say it's outside of the realm of possibility. Now, this isn't financial advice, but if Trump is buying Ethereum like Tic Tacs, it might have a chance of going up in value in the future. I'll leave it at that. Now, a lot of people were disappointed that there wouldn't be a massive buying program because that would skyrocket the share value of Bitcoin. I get it. But I also, even from the start, I didn't like the idea of taxpayers footing the bill for Bitcoin for the United States to hold, right? If we're going to foot the bill, we want the direct benefit of it. However, there is a clause in the executive order that says that the people that Trump selected must find a budget-neutral way to acquire more Bitcoin. They have to find sensible ways of acquiring more Bitcoin so we can beat China, who already has 200,000. Meaning, in my humble opinion, there is a path for acquiring Bitcoin and stabilizing higher prices for Bitcoin. And even BlackRock, you know BlackRock, the investment firm that keeps buying disaster zones for pennies on the dollar to build a digital concentration camp, even they are suggesting 2 to 3% allocation of Bitcoin to their investors. Institutional adoption is happening. It's already happening. From Michael Saylor to Jeff Bezos, the future looks profitable for some people. Now, the day before Trump signed this executive order, he posted on Truth Social about Solana, Cardano, and ADA. And in the first post, he didn't say anything about Bitcoin or Ethereum in a strategic reserve. He called these first three out by name. If I had to guess, there's a part of Trump, there's a piece of him, a tendency inside him that loves when his rumors literally have the power to spike and crash crypto markets. It's like a show of power to signal to the crypto crowd that this situation is under his command, not the other way around. So now that I probably lost half of you by saying anything nice about Trump, I want to show you what Chris Hedges believes about Trump worship.
Trump's victory rally, there was a prayer said, and it struck me. And I immediately thought, what would Chris Hedges say? The person reading the prayer said, President Trump, we set the name of the Lord upon you, and we declare that no weapon formed against you will prosper, that every tongue that rises up against you in judgment will be condemned, and if God be for you, who can be against you? And I said, wow, I've heard that prayer a lot of times. I've heard that scripture from Isaiah a lot of times in the black church and other churches. Didn't expect to hear it said over Donald Trump. When you hear it, what do you make of it?
Idolatry, Moloch, worshiping the feet of Moloch. It's idolatry, it's heresy. It's the sacralization of human and political power, which is probably the greatest sin any religious institution can make. I dug deep inside to this Leviathan called the Christian right, that I call American fascists.
And Christian nationalists, right? I mean,
yeah, they're complete nationalists. And, what they are is they are essentially equivalent of the so-called German Christian church established under the fascists in Germany, where on one side you had the Christian cross and the other the Nazi flag. And let's be clear, Mark, this church is bankrolled by the very billionaire class that we talked about. Why? Because with Magic Jesus, you don't need labor unions. With Magic Jesus, you don't need health care, because Magic Jesus is going to give you a Cadillac and make all your dreams come true. And that is that shift from a reality-based world into the world of magical thinking. And once people shift into that world of magical thinking, you can't reach them through rational argument.
Is that going to come through the Trump administration 2.0 even more?
Yeah. These are the people who won. They just won.
Yeah. Trump is probably Moloch. I'd even go so far as to say he's the Antichrist, because I don't think that the Antichrist has to be purely evil. It just has to be something that the people want to scapegoat onto. I might say that Trump is the Antichrist. But what would Jesus do if he met the Antichrist? What would Jesus do if he met Trump? Come on, you probably know the answer, you just don't want to say it. He'd probably love him. Christ would probably love Trump, with all his flaws, with all of his tendencies. Just saying, are you a Christian? Or do you love like Christ? That's an important distinction. Now, let's look at Vivek Ramaswamy's opinion on Bitcoin and the American spirit.
I think it is going to be the sectors of the future, from semiconductors to nuclear energy, from biotech to Bitcoin to our defense industrial base, the state where we use AI not to take jobs, but to make jobs through workforce training and education. Think about AI for a second. Capital that's flowing into training new AI, and that's a fine thing to do. I think an underappreciated opportunity is training human beings, training workforces and skilled workers to use that AI and apply it to their respective fields, from healthcare to financial services to construction design. That's where you're going to see a productivity leap. And so it's in that spirit, as we're having a discussion today about Bitcoin, we could talk about other sectors of the future as well. But as we're having that discussion about Bitcoin, it's that spirit, that pioneering spirit of ambition, helps revive us, help us remind us of who we are, that spirit of excellence, boundlessness, exceptionalism, without apology, right? We've been taught to apologize for excellence. No longer. Don't apologize for success. The paths to success are plural. Every path open to every child, built on the idea of meritocracy, a nation that recognizes that every one of us, every one of you has your own unique God-given gift that is distinct from every other person in the world, but that we're the nation where you get to use the maximum of your own God-given gift, whatever that may be, to realize the maximum of your potential. That is the American ethos. And I see that same ethos. You could see it, you could feel it, you could smell it, right, in the ethos of the Bitcoin revolution as well.
To me, you can really tell that Vivek sees Bitcoin as a valuable asset at the state level, and several other states are following suit, like Texas, and that's really remarkable. But what Vivek is really saying in this video is that we need to revive the pioneering spirit of America. And America is the best simply because of that spirit of innovation and ambition. That's nice. However, it does have an arrogant language that will trigger most people. America is the worst in many people's minds. They're like, why would you like anything about America? But what I see Vivek saying is that we need to build the greatest nation from the soil of a merit-based idea. And to be arrogant about having a superior soil can only be proven by walking the walk. Meaning, if you say this idea is the best and you seem arrogant about it, if you walk the walk and it proves to actually be a remarkable idea, then it wasn't arrogant, it was boldly stated. But another thing that we need, which I definitely think Vivek has a lot more than Trump, is humility. America has used black book operations to destabilize other countries and plunge them into debt traps through the IMF. The same IMF that's forbidding El Salvador from using federal funds to purchase Bitcoin. Do you know what El Salvador said in return?
President Bukele made it clear that the country will not stop accumulating Bitcoin.
Gangster. I mean, they're just buying that shit on the daily. I do think there is something to be said for being bold like El Salvador in the face of massive resistance like the IMF and even decades-old contracts that were shitty and disingenuous to begin with. They were debt traps. Let's just be blunt about it. But there's also something to be said for being humble enough to match that boldness, so you're not just arrogant. Something that America could do well if the people would stop taking the rage bait from social media and just engage with each other like we want a good solution. Engage with a solution that is within everyone's grasp. And no, I don't mean we all should go out and buy Bitcoin. I think the most gangster and humble thing to do is to find that unique God-given gift that we all have and serve the collective with it. Don't just follow your individual bliss. You have to engage with society. Have a discourse with your community. Get involved with something bigger than just your own self-interest, because the fate of American culture depends on returning to at least these family values, not religious family values, but that of caring for one another rather than purely competing for self-serving interests.
I mean, if the society is based on control by private wealth, it will reflect the values that it in fact does reflect. The value that the only real human property is the desire is greed and the desire to maximize personal gain at the expense of others. Now, any society, maybe a small society based on that principle is ugly, but it can survive. A global society based on that principle is headed for massive destruction, and that's what we are. We have to have a mode of social organization that reflects other values that I think are inherent in human nature that people recognize.
And that would be, I want to see exactly what you mean.
I mean, what are human beings? I mean, in your family, for example, it's not the case that in the family every person tries to maximize personal gain at the expense of others, or if they do, it's kind of pathological. I mean, the idea of care for others and concern for other people's needs and concern for a fragile environment that must sustain future generations, all of these things are part of human nature. These are elements of human nature that are suppressed in a social and cultural system which is designed to maximize personal gain. And I think we must try to overcome that suppression, and that's in fact what democracy could bring about. It could lead to the expression of other human needs and values which tend to be suppressed under the institutional structure of a system of private power and private profit.
What he just summed up in this video, it's the spirit that either surrenders to or revolts against incentive structures. Now I want to talk about what Elon is doing with Doge and what impact that could have on the U.S. economy.
You know, the Doge thing is recessionary. You know, you have to know that. It's austerity. And look at countries that go to austerity, Great Britain as an example. Austerity governments lead to slow-growing economies. And so you want to pull $500 or $1 trillion out of the federal budget? I got you. You know, I would freeze the goddamn thing before I pulled it. So I think there's things you can do that represent economic gradualism as opposed to chainsaw. When I see Millet out there with the chainsaw and Musk out there with the chainsaw, I'm like, guys, it's the United States. It's not Argentina. We don't need the chainsaw, okay? Okay, and maybe we need something bigger than a scalpel, but it should be sharp like a scalpel.
Well, it's interesting because I think everybody, politics aside, should agree that Americans should know where their tax dollars are going and that waste should be cut. But of course, we can't just do that in the normal and measured way that you just mentioned.
Well, but I mean, that's what Clinton did, though. Clinton said, we're going to cut it. He got Republicans and Democrats together. He had people look at it. And then he created a fair and judicial process inside the spirit of the Constitution and the democracy to cut it.
Clinton was on the Epstein flight list, allegedly. We'll never see that list, so I'm probably wrong. But anyway, I agree that we don't want to be all rock and roll and cool, like trying to take down entire institutions with a single blow in a single night. You also don't want to waste an entire presidential term without being a little bold and just going for the goal. So, meaning you have to cut government spending, but you don't want to force unnecessary pain in the country. Somebody, or should I say some class, much like the lower class, is going to have to feel the pain to make it through what's coming. We've kicked the can down the road far enough. We need to face what running a debt game has done to the world. So firstly, thank you, Elon, for caring about this particular problem. But please put down the chainsaw, stop sending your heart out to us, and bringing your kid to the Oval Office doesn't make you look like more of a family man. It's only seen as a mockery by most people that you should be trying to win over right now. We need to cherish unity rather than division. We need to try and sew back the wounds that this idiocracy, or the seeming idiocracy, has caused in the trust of most Americans. Oh, and let's get Congress to vote on Doge before it becomes a real thing, because until they vote on it, it's really just power that you're riding on that has no lasting power. Get Congress to vote on it. Now, as for Trump, thank you for not making taxpayers pay for the country's Bitcoin. And I also want you to explain to me why your Trump and Melania meme coins were operated exactly, textbook, like a pump and dump scheme to disingenuously siphon money from the desperate people in this country that you say you are working for. You're better than that, and I see your potential. I also see your tendencies. Vivek, come smoke DMT with me, and I'll tell you about the trip where I saw you as our future president. Well, I guess that's the whole story, so you can just go smoke weed and imagine it if you want. You don't need me buying you drugs. To all the rest of you, invest in Bitcoin if you're in a position to do so, but hold it for at least 4 years before you even think of selling it to make it a worthwhile investment. And mainly, I want you to find that spirit inside you, not the one left over by slaveholders from the past, but the one that animates you towards serving your community and being a better person, doing the labor that only future generations will get to enjoy the fruit thereof. That's the American spirit. You are writing the new story of, if you're not in America, whatever nation you're in. You are writing the better story. You could say it's the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible, because all of reality, I do believe, extends itself from a singular story that's been told since the dawn of time. If you can connect to that, I guarantee you will not see all the volatility online, all the political divisiveness as a problem. You'll just see it as the landscape. There's a garden, there's weeds, there's things you need to tend to, there's other things that they're just annoying because of the way that you frame it in your mind. But find that spirit that wants to serve rather than pull people apart and create divisive categories that lead to no good other than an empire in decline. The America that I want to live in is simply one that reflects a better human that we can all strive towards. I love you all. I'll catch y'all next time on the Awakening Protocols.